Hi friends and people who enjoyed this awesome crypto show that I get to be a part of. We are back with another show diving deep, very deep, into the famous Oracle network known as Chainlink. A quick note, due to the nature of the internet and Karim and I are living very, very far from each other. He's from Egypt, I'm from Taiwan. There might be some quality issues, but I've done my best audio magic to trying to fix this. And welcome to the 9th episode of the Inside Crypto Podcast. This episode was recorded on September 28th, 2021. Today, we are joined by Karim, one of the researchers here at Amun, who's a big fan of the project and knows a fair bit about it. He gives us an extensive introduction into his background, so those of you thinking about getting into crypto might want to give that portion an extra close attention. We also talk about what Chainlink is, how it works, what makes it special, some new developments in the project, and some interesting things happening in the future. We had prepared some news for today, as usual, but we got so enthralled with Chainlink that we just didn't have any time, so we'll have to make up for it next time. Thanks everyone for listening to this episode, and don't forget to tune in next week where we interview another member of this wonderful world that we live in, the cryptocurrency world. Good evening, morning, and afternoon to all you crypto investors. Welcome back to the 8th episode of our Inside Crypto Podcast. It's Korean, and today I am very lucky to be joined by another member of our research team, Karim. You've heard me talking about him. We finally nailed that at the time, and he's actually here, and I'm absolutely thrilled because this guy is smart. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, children, if you're listening, we're going to have an awesome show today. Today, we're going to be talking about Chainlink. I know people who have listened to previous episodes. Zoe mentioned this before, but today we're going to really dive a whole episode about this very interesting, very unique company. But before we do, don't forget to head over to our website, www.amun.com. You can read about our existing products, DFI and DMX there. You can also buy the tokens if you're interested. I'm not going to go into what they are. Go to our website, check them out. If you have any feedback about this episode or any questions, or you'd like to ask Karim a question or me a question, please email me, Crin, C-R-I-N, @amun.com. I also have to remind you, as usual, like with any crypto show on the internet in 2021, anything said in this episode does not, I have to emphasize that, does not constitute financial advice. Please do your own research. All our opinions are our own, my opinion and Karim's opinion, and are not to be connected with our employer. Because it's just Karim today, we can spend a little more time talking about himself and how he got into working with crypto and just his background. So Karim, welcome. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Kriyan. Thank you for the very friendly introduction. And yeah, as you said, I'm really glad that we finally nailed a time to have this awesome conversation. So let's have a go at it. So to give you a bit of context as to how I started working into crypto, I was doing my international relations and journalism degree in the UK. It started, like my degree started around the end of 2017. So this was probably around the time that Brexit was concluding and around the time that Trump was rising to the global stage. My first degree was international relations and my second one was journalism. And in one of the modules that I was enrolled in, we were supposed to create a blog for something that was quite trending in journalism. And as I just alluded to, it was fake news. So around that time, I was sort of trying to probe into what was the latest technological advancement that can be used to tackle this issue. And blockchain obviously was the winning candidate. When this was happening, this was around like halfway through 2018 or like at the end of 2018. There was actually this project that the New York Times was working on. If I am remembering the name correctly, it was called something like News Provenance Project, and it was all about how you can supply certain media with metadata. This metadata would serve to prove the provenance and the origin of the media that is being used, whether that may be a picture or a video. For me, when I processed really like how this whole concept of metadata helping to supplement the originality and the authenticity of whatever media you're trying to show, it just blew my mind. And at that point, I didn't really have any understanding of what blockchain was or cryptography or really anything related to this ecosystem. Paved the path for me to make a blog. I broke down, like over a period of, I think, 3 to 5 months, I broke down what blockchain was, what cryptography is, what the term distributed ledger technology means, and like just the most recent sort of use cases around the world of how the technology was used. So it was an amazing journey. It ended when when the course itself was over, and I didn't really have the chance to probe deeper into blockchain until I graduated. That was almost a year and a half later. So by the time I graduated in July of 2019, I came back home. I was really just sort of discouraged from finding work related to either journalism or international relations around here. So I thought that I should really just stick to this, just discover what it has for me. So just a couple of months in of being in Egypt, I started this sort of e-degree at the University of Cornell. It was called Blockchain for Business, and it lasted for about 3 to 4 months. Ironically, that's actually why I am one of the reasons why I'm talking about Chainlink today. Because one of the four lecturers that was teaching me during this course, his name was Ari Jules. He was the former chief scientist of the RSA company. The RSA company is, if for people who don't know, one of the, let's say, commonly established security standards that is being used around the world. So he was the chief scientist of the company for, I think, about 5 to 7 years. He left it after that, and he joined the University of Cornell, working on just security protocols. So essentially, during our course, he really was this sort of Satoshi Nakamoto to me. He very much motivated me into appreciating what smart contracts are all about, the capabilities that are enabled with digitizing certain inefficient methods in our day-to-day life and transforming it on a smart contract. He genuinely made me fall in love with crypto and it was smart contracts mainly. I mean, smart contract is a form of crypto, but yeah, let's just leave it at that. A year
That's
later,
okay.
I
Go ahead.
realized that he was working on a protocol called Deco. Deco is essentially like a privacy preserving protocol. It is something that can be used to supplement users of knowing certain facts about their TLS session. A TLS is a transport layer security session. And this is something that we have been using in Web 2.0 for years. But now what he has been working on with his team at the University of Cornell is how you can supplement Deco to the Oracle security of Chainlink. And that laid the foundation for why Chainlink made a partnership with the University of Cornell to hire his entire team and have him as the chief scientist, working on increasing the security of Oracle data transmission. But yeah, that's what paved the path for me to really get engaged with smart contracts. So by the time I finished this degree, I began probing into JavaScript and Solidity, just having a very basic understanding of both programming languages, because this is essentially what is used to develop smart contracts and to develop front ends for smart contracts. So I dabbled my toes into those two languages just to have this very high level basic understanding of, if I saw a smart contract that is deployed on Ethereum, I can just have the most primitive understanding of it. And that was really, let's say, a good opening for me to get involved in this industry. A couple of months of experimenting with those languages, I heard back from the University of Cambridge. I had applied for an internship at the University of Cambridge's Center for Alternative Finance, which is essentially just a research center that explores the implications and the benefits of cryptocurrencies, distributed ledger technologies, and blockchains. And I worked there for about 9 months. The core of what I was doing was we had this report called the Third Global Crypto Asset Benchmarking Study. And it was essentially just sort of exploring the mechanics and the essential pillars of what makes the global crypto ecosystem. So it was an absolutely insightful and an in-depth exploration of how the dynamics of this whole space comes together. And it was an awesome experience, and it really began showing me the benefits of DeFi, because I had heard of DeFi before I joined Cambridge, but I didn't really just like sort of fully process it until I began having a bit of exposure to projects that were implementing DeFi, especially as this was the initial takeoff of DeFi. Like There was Maker and Aave, well, just Maker, honestly, from about 2018. But DeFi as a sub niche or as a sub segment of crypto didn't really take off until 2020, which was around the time that I joined Cambridge. So yeah, it was an amazing experience. When I was done, well, like when my contract was done in December, I was just so keen on officiating my relationship with this industry, which helped me decide to start a master's on blockchain and digital currency, which I did start back in February. And yeah, took 3 courses and then just decided to take a month or two off to see where I fit in this whole crazy industry and what I can contribute, because at that point I was just sort of processing or absorbing way too much without putting it into much practice. And so I thought that finding, a job related to crypto would be the best usage of all this knowledge that I've been gaining, leading to joining this incredible company that we are at right now, 21 Shares. I found 21 Shares through just after probably like 2.5 months of LinkedIn and Google searches. But I really fell in love with what Hani, our founder, is trying to do with the company. He has this absolutely incredible vision of, well, not just vision, he really understands how DeFi is the next big thing. I think also considering his background, that we are both Egyptians, and he has seen the sheer inefficiency of, the just trust us based models, which is pretty much like that's how the whole world operates just until crypto existed. In developing economies such as ours, it's it's crazily inefficient, and there's so much that can be improved if we were to integrate the core characteristics of DeFi. And so when I had the conversation with him, I was really encouraged and delighted to learn more and more about his short to medium to long term vision of DeFi, his whole vision of, simplifying the complexity of DeFi by offering certain decentralized financial products that would, automate certain tasks that us as DeFi degens we would have to do on a manual day-to-day basis. All of that would be automated. And so I really appreciated his vision and what he wants to do with the company, and how he wants to cement the standing of our company.
Nice.
I'm breaking the long story of how I joined 21 Shares.
That's no problem. I mean, that's a great story, and you put so much of detail in it. I got one quick question, right? Because I'm from South Africa, but I'm ethnically Indian, and sort of, Arabic or Muslim cultures, Indian cultures tend to be more conservative when it comes to jobs and that sort of stuff for young Egyptians. Um,
Hmm.
how what would you say if they are thinking about joining the crypto industry? How could they convince their parents or their grandparents to say, hey, mom, dad, grandpa, grandma, I want to try this, please let me do it? How did your parents take it when you were like, I'm going to join this crypto industry? I can imagine it's a very non-traditional job in Egypt.
You've just described it perfectly. Well, to be very honest, there was a lot of tension and friction when I was trying to help them to be convinced with this direction that I'm taking. My dad was completely on board with it, just because he has a bit of more technical sophistication, I guess, than my mom to a certain extent. So she didn't really grasp a lot of what I was saying. But then as more time passed by and I began just really giving them this analogy of, their 30, 35, 40 years ago when the internet was existing, we saw like all of those companies that were just literally coming from the ground up. Like they didn't have any precedent to be reliant on. There wasn't any sort of like previous successful strategies for these companies to thrive. They were building themselves up from the ground up. And this is what the internet did. We saw with the bust and boom cycles of the internet. However, the internet also was predominantly designed to just transfer information. It was never meant to transfer value. And considering how a huge portion of what we do nowadays is just online, It's the transition essentially from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0. Web 2.0, we had a lot of data. All of this data, we started appreciating how valuable it is, but there wasn't really any way of exchanging it. And the only thing we could do was just, on social media, just discuss it with each other. But obviously, as this data became, I mean, data is the most valuable asset class right now. So considering the importance of that, the backbone of the internet itself was not designed to help with the transfer of this value, hence why blockchain existed. So when I started sketching out this transformation to them, they began accepting it. They began accepting that it's a whole new world and a paradigm that really does address some of the most pressing issues in societies such as ours, like just developing economies. The
Nice.
more I began sort of relating certain solutions that are coming out of the market that would be addressing, a systematic issue that we've always had, their belief just started becoming stronger and stronger. So for anyone aspiring to do that, it's not going to be an easy job. It really will not be. But that's why it will be very satisfying when you do have a chance to be part of this industry, because it will feel very satisfactory that you are being part, you're playing a huge part in building the new financial system. It really is. So you just have to keep this as a motivation in the back of your mind and just keep doing you.
Karim, we already talked about Zoe before, but she explained what Chainlink is very briefly. Do you want to go into some more detail or just explain once again to anybody who doesn't know what Chainlink is to tell us what it is? Sure.
Chainlink is the world's first decentralized Oracle network. So for certain people that might confuse it, it's not a network of oracles. It's a network of networks of oracles. That is a very important distinction, because this is actually what differentiates it from similar Oracle projects that are found on either like Ethereum or Solana or Tezos. So although other implementations exist, Chainlink has been pioneering their mastery on Oracle services. Due to them being the first movers in the market, the development team is full of just completely dedicated individuals who have been working in similar fields related to data transmission and the total addressable market, obviously, of Chainlink, which is, this is something that we will talk about later on, but it's in the trillions of dollars, obviously. So just to give you a more coherent perspective on what it does, on its very basic level, it provides smart contracts with a tamper-proof and highly available connection to all the world's possible data feeds. So essentially, what it does is that blockchains, they are separated environments. They are the underlying networks, but they don't have any connection to the outer world. And they were designed with this in mind because that's how they manage their security internally without having any unintended exposure to malicious actors in the outer world. So what Chainlink started off by doing was just provide a mechanism for smart contracts to build a connection or a path to any potential API that exists in our world right now. And by API, I mean application programming interface. That is essentially the component of the software that is responsible for communicating data outside of it. So we've been using APIs in our tech world for as long as we can remember. And hence, as they have been functioning, Chainlink, what it does is just connect to APIs and have a standardized way of transmitting data from exterior API endpoints to smart contracts. In essence, if people have been paying attention on Twitter, it's the price feeds. Like we've been seeing how Chainlink has the price feeds for, Bitcoin against USDT or Ethereum against USDT. That concept of price feeds, that was the first product that emerged as a result of the Oracle model that Chainlink has been having. So I'm gonna talk a little bit of the architecture, how it
Sure.
works. So the first thing, as I have already alluded to before, it's a network of networks. A network of networks means that you as a user, you want to use a certain node operator who is heavily more involved in transmitting weather data, for instance. So you can choose a network, an Oracle network of, like, I don't know, 13 to 14 node operators who are more competent with working with this type of data. And on the other side, you might have another smart contract that wants to query data from, like, some athletic event. You want to know the score of a soccer game. So you might have another Oracle, like another network of oracles that are just proficient with dealing with this type of data. This sort of flexibility is what really helps Chainlink to stand out. It's not a rigid system of, having everyone having to report on this kind of data. It offers the flexibility for node operators to specialize in certain type of tasks and to get the rewarding fee as a result of that. So this is something that is really important. And what this flexibility also allows for is that for users who are wanting to use Chainlink's Oracle service, it gives them the flexibility to choose their data source. It gives them the flexibility to choose their data aggregation strategy, because, as I've already said, it's not, when you're connecting to an exterior, you will not be expecting this data to be transmitted through just one oracle or through one node operator. It's a network of node operators, and that's how they maintain the decentralization aspect of it. And you can also look for other parameters when you're going for a job like this, for like an oracle job like this. You could be opting for a certain reputational threshold, since everything is done on chain. So with that in mind, you would have historical performance that can be onboarded into reputational systems that would eventually prove how each node operator has been performing, historically speaking.
Oh, okay. A quick question, right? Is so I asked you about a topic and you said you wanted to talk about Chainlink.
Hmm.
Why is Chainlink so exciting, or why should people be excited by it? Why does Chainlink excite you?
My vision, and this is actually the researchers team vision as well, we have a belief that we are approaching a multi-chain future. A multi-chain future means that you can potentially have a high proprietary trading. So for instance, if you're looking at a blockchain like Solana has a high throughput of almost 50,000 transactions per second, theoretically speaking. We have the blockchain has not been an environment to, like, fully experiment with this until the issue that happened 2 weeks ago. But theoretically speaking, it has the highest transactional throughput between all the blockchains. So, for instance, if you want to have a trading project, something that would involve a high frequency trading, that cannot really be done with on a blockchain like Ethereum. One, because of how it allows for a limited number of transactions per second, which is 15, and two, due to the gas fees issue. So if you would to have a scenario where you need the project to be executing a couple of simultaneous transactions, on Ethereum it's completely infeasible. So in that sense, you can have a DeFi application, a DeFi trading application built on Solana that serves this purpose. And on the other side, let's just hypothetically assume that you have this other NFT minting application, and we're just going to hypothetically again say that a blockchain like Flow, for instance, which is the blockchain done by Dapper Labs, which are the ones who created the CryptoKitties game. For anyone who had the experience of playing with it or have seen it before, so you can have an NFT project on one chain and then a DeFi trading application on another chain. But then at the end of the day, what the conversation has been centered around is, no matter how advanced the crypto or the blockchain ecosystem is going to grow into, there's always going to be the most trusted source of settlement and the most trusted network for settlement. It will either be Bitcoin or Ethereum. So the future that we are approaching is that you will have applications deployed on different chains, but then a certain, like, the most critical piece of infrastructure, which is the settlement, it's going to be done on either Bitcoin or on Ethereum. And to be fair, it's more on Bitcoin because proof of work is just the most secure consensus algorithm that exists in our world right now. So to make an analogy for this, if Chainlink with their decentralized Oracle networks that offers not just the price feeds, because price feeds has only been the tip of the iceberg. They offer so much more now. And by the so much more, I'm talking about something like Chainlink Keepers. Chainlink Keepers is essentially a committee of node operators that would be able to automate certain tasks based on predefined conditions. For instance, triggering the liquidation of an under collateralized loan. That a smart contract would not be able to do this by itself. It would need the input of a third party. So this is just a bit complex, but I'm gonna
Go
help you
ahead. No,
to.
no, it's really interesting, and you're explaining it in a very good way.
Okay. So because this decentralized Oracle network that has been predominantly just involved with the price feeds, it has already successfully secured from, if I'm remembering this figure correctly from the conference, from the Chainlink conference, like the thing that happened almost a month and a half ago, they're securing about 35 billion in total value secured. That's a huge number. And considering how DeFi is almost 110 billion in the total value locked right now. So considering how almost 60% of DeFi applications they need oracles for not just the basic functionalities that I've already alluded to, which is the price feeds. No, it's for the all the off-chain computationally intensive tasks that they may need. At the end of the day, you need a network that is cryptographically proven, that has a cryptographically proven track record of being able to deliver your data accurately, to deliver it on time. So to deliver data accurately, on time, and to maintain an uptime, which in other words means to be online and alive on the network for as much as possible. So for the underlying network, which is the DONs, that's the abbreviation of decentralized Oracle networks, for a network that has already proven its worth, it has already proven, and it has its on-chain verified historical performance that backs the reliability. When you think about it, having such a reliable network and considering the other things that I'm about to explain to you, like what they are involved in, it's going Chainlink as the network itself, it's going to be the de facto for global communication, because oracles and transmitting data, that was just the first component, but now they're working on like 5 or 6 other different components. And the thing that is like commonly denominated between all of them is the nodes themselves. And that actually takes me to another point of how nodes can join the network, because this is also a very important distinction. You have 2 types of nodes. The nodes are essentially the individuals who are going to join the network and start executing or fulfilling the tasks that are being asked of them. So, one, you either have a security reviewed node operator. These are individuals with known identities and they are approved by the Chainlink team. The whole purpose of doing this, even though it sort of stands a bit against the ethos of you can be whoever you want and join the network, it's because the network itself is involved in delivering a lot of data with a lot of sensitivity and just highly valuable data. So you can't really just have anyone contribute to that. But that's also why that's not the only type of nodes that you can find on the network. There is also non-security reviewed nodes, and those are either known or unknown identities. They come potentially from traditional markets or they can just be from the Chainlink community. And then third and most, let's say, not impressive, but to be fair, it is impressive, just specialized data providers. For instance, AccuWeather.
Popular weather forecast site available all over the world.
Exactly. They have launched their own Chainlink node. This actually came out as news like right before the conference. They have their own node, and they are cryptographically signing all the data that they are emitting to the network. Because if you just think about it, having trusted data that is verifiable that comes from AccuWeather, Now you can look at all of those applications, all of those insurance applications that are popping out all over Africa for a project, for instance, like EtherRisk, or there is this other application. What was it? Orable. These are two decentralized insurance projects, which essentially, like, their whole business model is issuing payouts to farmers based on weather conditions, based on queried weather conditions. For instance, if there's a certain level of rain that the farming land has reached through IoT sensors or through the aggregation of data from AccuWeather, then this insurance policy will be triggered and the payout will be sent to the farmer. So having this sort of very valuable and reliable data coming directly from data providers, that just adds a ton of credibility to what the network is able to offer and to provide. I feel like we've circled around the question a lot, and I haven't still got to the answer, but I'll get into it.
No problem. I mean, it's what you've said is all very interesting. So keep on going.
Okay. So just to give a wider perspective on what Chainlink actually does right now. So we've already discussed how the DONs, the decentralized Oracle networks, they have been predominantly involved with providing just price feeds, because price feeds, as you can think from like a very primitive level, it's the most essential component of all of those DeFi applications, or all of those DeFi projects that popped out over the past year and a half. Having reliable price feeds means that your application will not break down in times of extreme volatility. So back to price feeds. This is the most essential component for all of those DeFi applications, whether they may be lending, whether they may be borrowing, whether they may be yield farming. Having a reliable price feed just helps you to avoid the project from breaking down in times of extreme volatility. It helps with settling price predictions and decentralized prediction markets. That's a whole new industry that has not thrived yet, but we are approaching that industry. Price feeds can also help with calculating rewards, for the example of yield farming that I just mentioned. So, yeah, if you want to visualize the composition of DeFi applications, this is something that needs to exist on the first layer, because this is essentially the whole financial product is built around the consistency and the accuracy of those price feeds, because otherwise you'll just have a completely broken down DeFi app. So this is what they started off with, based on the fact that this is actually what Sergey Nazarov has said in his keynote speech at the conference. His vision for Chainlink was that his strategy for Chainlink is that you need to find your niche, just something very specific that you want to work on and that you feel that you can contribute a lot towards, which again was connecting data and transmitting data from exterior API endpoints to the blockchain. The first example of that was price feeds. So his strategy was that our team needs to find something, it needs to master it, and once we feel very confident in our ability to scale this kind of service or task way beyond than how it originally started, that's when you know that you have a reliable infrastructure based upon you can expand the type of Oracle services that Chainlink can offer. And that's exactly what happened. They were completely devoted to price feeds for about a year and a half. But obviously, in the background, they have been developing all of those other solutions that I'm about to introduce. But yeah, that's essentially what it is. So based on the success of the decentralized Oracle networks, evidenced by the billions of dollars that the network has been securing, they began rolling out a bunch of new services. One of them is something called a VRF, verifiable random function, that essentially guarantees on-chain randomness. You can think of that of how it can be useful in decentralized lottery projects. You know, you can have a pool of 25 people enter into a certain transaction, and you want to guarantee a fair and an impartial way of distributing rewards to those users. One way to do that in a cryptographically proven way would to use this verifiable random function. So it's an Oracle as a service function that you can just query the Chainlink committee of node operators to fulfill for you. So it's just like an additional service on the things that you can ask the Chainlink known or unknown node operators to fulfill for you. Another example is their asset collateralization. What that means essentially is that they will provide proof of reserves. How, like a very simple example of this is how Gemini launched their Ethereum wrapped version of Filecoin. This happened, I think, about a week ago. And in order for them, like this was Gemini's strategy. They want to provide a transparent and an accountable way of showing to their users that the wrapped Ethereum version of Filecoin is actually supplemented and backed by the exact amount of Filecoin, of the Filecoin token that they claim. And so the way they would do that is that they would utilize the proof of reserves that the Chainlink operators offer now. So they would just sort of confirm that whatever asset that you're holding in collateral, it exists, and it exists to match this wrapped version of the token. And you can apply this on a much wider scale. All of those bridged or wrapped versions of tokens, that would be one of the ways for a company that really wants to engage in a transparent sort of behavior. That's one of the ways to go about it. Another thing that they've just started offering, I think about around the beginning of this year, is transaction ordering, something called a fair sequencing service. A fair sequencing service is, to make better sense of it, look at Ethereum or Bitcoin, the way the mempool operates. Every transaction has a timestamp. There's no disagreement about that. But before the transaction reaches the mempool, there isn't really a specific order for them to abide by. And that's actually what allows miners to selectively choose certain transactions over the others who benefit them economically. Because once the transactions are in the mempool, they're just chilling like it's in a waiting room at a deserted place. There isn't really anything that orders them. And that has been the design of Ethereum and Bitcoin. So like it has its flaws, but it's the way it is. So for projects who are deployed on Ethereum, like for instance Synthetic integrated their fair sequencing service because they essentially wanted to avoid this gas wars dilemma that has been happening on Synthetic. I was looking at the gas volumes that existed on Synthetic platform about a year ago, and they really had some wild discrepancies.
How wild are we talking about?
Like I would say that the volume would be on a certain day like 25 20 from 25 to 30x of the average gas estimations of the day before.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
yeah, because also when you look at Synthetic, the minting process, Synthetic, for people who don't know what Synthetic is, it's a synthetics essentially platform. You mint a tokenized version of whatever asset or commodity that exists in the traditional finance. And this process of minting itself, it's quite complex. It's not like swapping from one crypto asset to the other. It requires more complexity to make it happen. So for the gas wars, well, for the gas fees that were auctioned with these type of transactions, they were quite high. They were quite high and quite unpredictable. But aside from the unpredictability, just having those transactions ordered in a fair manner, that has completely alleviated the situation. Or let's not say completely alleviated the situation, but drastically reduced the volatility and the deviations of the gas estimations that would come with transactions.
That's good.
And that you can obviously see how that can also help with combating minor extractable value, MEV. So for people who don't understand what MEV is, it's the concept of having your transactions broadcasted on the mempool. And for miners, since they are essentially just, seeing all of those transactions queued in the mempool. Let's say that someone wants to swap 1,000 USDT for to get some Ethereum, or let's not say that. Let's use it actually on an NFT. Someone wants to pay like $2,000 for an NFT that is probably worth like 500 or something. For a miner, he would be seeing that this transaction is queued in the mempool, and he can do something called a sandwich attack. He can initiate the same transaction that is essentially in the mempool with a bit of a higher gas price, which essentially means that he would be able to sandwich the original transaction in the mempool and allow himself to acquire the NFT and potentially raise its value. So for the original user who has failed to get his hands on this NFT, if he were to purchase it, there would be a slippage, a price slippage. So that's how the whole MEV miner extractable value works. It's essentially
Nice.
using the open design system of mempool to corner users and potentially benefit out of their broadcasted transactions by replicating the same transaction with a higher gas price, which would give them the priority over the original transaction that was submitted. So that's for the transaction ordering. Two more things. First thing is Chainlink Keepers. Chainlink Keepers is essentially a committee of Chainlink operators or of node operators. And what it does is that it enables the automation of on-chain transactions based on predefined conditions. So as I was explaining, or as we've already touched upon before, someone has a loan on Aave. The smart contract itself, it's like because this might be something that confuses people. It's a smart contract, but it's not smart to execute certain tasks or certain functions by itself. It still needs the input of a third party. So in that instance, if one of like, because loans usually compromise of two assets, if a certain asset reaches a minimal threshold, and this loan needs to be liquidated in order for the protocol to maintain its solvency, a chain link keeper would be observing the network and would send the liquidating uh, command to the loan itself, well, to the smart contract. And in that sense, this would give the opportunity for smart contract developers, or just generally speaking for project developers, to be working on the brilliance of their smart contracts, but then outsource the certain critical and repetitive functions that you may need to a trustworthy network of node operators. So in that case, it would be the nonce. So this really just saves time. Also, in other regards, if there is a certain function that needs to be executed on top of the smart contract that is costly, Chainlink, they have released something called the OCR, off chain reporting, and that's essentially a way for the node operators to communicate off chain in a much more efficient manner. It would be using something called the libp2p, which is an open source project Filecoin and IPFS interplanetary file system is built on. What it means, it's just a peer-to-peer messaging protocol that is not computationally intensive and is done off-chain. So essentially, that would increase the speed of how messages are transmitted between node operators, and it would reduce the costs of having to coordinate whatever action that needs to be coordinated on chain by taking it off chain. So based on this fact, if there is a, I don't know, like an expensive type of a function that would involve, liquidating an asset and then withdrawing this asset to another application, to another DeFi project, and then executing this other function, that's a very expensive set of commands. So if you have the chain link keepers operating through the OCR, the off-chain reporting, this whole function would just be a lot cheaper if done through Chainlink Keepers. And that takes me to the last and most impressive bit of what they are working on right now. And this is their sort of like latest release. It's what is called as CCIP, Cross-Chain Interoperability Protocol. What is CCIP? It's it's an abbreviation for Cross-Chain Interoperability Protocol, and essentially what it does is that, as I've already alluded to before, that's not just my own personal belief, that's the whole researchers team conviction. We are approaching a multi-chain world. So you're going to have certain applications on one chain and then different types of applications deployed on another chain that's just, sort of tailored to its use case and to the properties that it needs. So all of those chains that are emerging, we've already seen how bridging, like the concept of bridging, again, for people who don't know what bridging is, it's just the act of taking one native cryptocurrency from its native blockchain and then moving it to another chain. How does that happen? It happens by bridging the token. And what does that mean? It means that you lock the original cryptocurrency in a smart contract, and then on the other side, you have the wrapped version of that token. So bridging has already been a sort of a catalyst for either Polygon or for Avalanche. Those are two, either layer one and layer twos, who've had their liquidity mining program kick off over the past few months. And bridging was the catalyst for how people, like for how just the ecosystem thrived, because people had their native assets elsewhere and they were able to use those same assets on those blockchains, even though it didn't really support it originally. But due to bridging, you had this cross chain liquidity in a way. However, what we have been witnessing so far has just been bridges built either by dedicated teams. So the two forms of bridges that we have seen so far are either bridges built by the team behind the layer one itself as a way of, building the infrastructure to onboard users from other chains, or we've seen a couple of aspiring and emerging projects that are building what is called as cross chain bridging. However, all of this is still in its inception. Like it's We're going to probably need, especially for the second type of bridges, we're going to need from 6 months to a year and even a bit longer than that to have a completely reliable and functional bridging system. So what Chainlink has been doing with this CCIP is that not only does it help, and it's not a bridge, it's a messaging. It's a good way to put it as a cross chain, and let's call it a chain interoperability protocol messaging system. So it would be the messaging system between different blockchains, but not only would it help with bridging or transferring assets from one chain to the other, it would actually also supplement it with carrying along with it a set of instructions. So, what does that mean? That means that not only are you allowed to transfer your cryptocurrencies, but if you want to transfer your cryptocurrencies and you want to withdraw it from Aave on Ethereum and deposit it into Compound on Binance Smart Chain, usually when you bridge your assets, you just have the tokenized version on the other blockchain, but that's as far as you can get. There's nothing more than that. However, with supporting the transmission of messages with the assets themselves, you can have a very complex bridge where it would allow transferring, for example, Ethereum ETH from the Ethereum network, withdrawing it through a bridge, depositing it into the sort of the matching smart contract on Avalanche. And not just that, you will want and the part of the instructions would be to lock it into Trader Joe, which is like just one of the emerging projects on Avalanche for liquidity pools, essentially liquidity pool mining. So you would lock your Avalanche wrapped version of Ethereum on Trader Joe, monitor the project itself, and monitor the global price for the asset that you've, which is for Ethereum. And if it reaches a certain threshold, then withdraw my token and bring it back to the original chain. that it came out from. That's insane when you think about it.
Oh yeah, monitoring both things. I mean, automation is awesome, and just doing that together, I mean, that creates a whole new level of capability for whoever.
Exactly. It's this whole new perception of hybrid smart contracts that would contain on-chain components and off-chain components that are not just limited by whatever use case it was originally intended for. You're providing the flexibility and providing the opportunity to really utilize the best characteristics and parameters of different blockchains in one go. Like that's what I mean when we first discussed interoperability as a concept just in the global crypto industry. I'm not sure how people envisioned it, but for me personally, I just thought that, also because of my basic understanding, but it was mainly just moving assets from one place to the other. I didn't really think that, you can send a set of instructions or a set of commands with your bridged assets and help utilize it in benefiting out of DeFi on different chains. This is actually what Celsius does. This was something that was announced also in the Chainlink conference.
Nice.
Celsius is already integrating the CCIP, and they are essentially doing this because they want to provide exposure for users to Aave on Ethereum while still benefiting out of Maker on Binance Smart Chain. And the reason why you would want to do that, for instance, is that there are certain assets that exist on one blockchain that do not exist on others. So with this CCIP in place, you are really providing a very entangled network of token transfers and just utilizing different blockchains for whatever purposes they exist to serve.
Nice. All right, man. You need a break before your next thing. So,
Yeah.
final question for today from the Amun Tokens Chainlink Karim show. What is your hope for Chainlink? What would you like to see happen in the future? If you could go up to Sergey and say, "Hey, Sergey, my name's Karim. This is what I want. What do you want?"
Okay. I'm just gonna say this so that you can sort of know what area I'm talking about that we've already
Sure.
touched on. One of the reasons that I really cherish what Chainlink does is this concept of cryptographic truth. We've already appreciated how cryptography is just underpinning everything. Like we're not living in a just trust us model anymore. And when I'm saying this, I'm really just re-emphasizing on what Sergey Nazarov. That's for anyone who doesn't understand or who doesn't know. He's the founder of Chainlink. This model, and also just another disclaimer, considering my background, this is something that really resonated with me. Living in a world of just trust us, whether that may be with banks, whether that may be with whatever financial institution we're dealing with, whether that may be with, you know, political outcomes, whether that may be with certain disclosures of certain companies, this just trust us model is really broken down, and it is not going to maintain itself anymore. Especially with COVID and with how the whole world just sort of paused for a little bit and began pondering and reflecting on all of those promises that we just hear all the time, but yet we don't really get the promises that we were given to us. We want something that reliably proves and corroborates whatever it is that we're dealing with. So this concept of cryptographic truth is, how can I say this properly? For people who have been living just within the crypto industry, we have completely appreciated what cryptography does and how it's a huge advancement in in the evolution of humankind. It will underpin our new financial systems. It will underpin everything that we will be involved with, as long as there is a blockchain and a cryptocurrency integrated into it. So, because of how much we have appreciated this, the sad thing about it is that it's just been limited to being involved in a blockchain based system. You wouldn't really appreciate its benefits from someone as an outsider, like for someone who exists outside the blockchain system. That's that is what Chainlink is really bringing to the table. That's what helped me go on board with them, with believing in their model and what they can actually bring to just the world in general. Being able to transmit this cryptographic truth from being an insider within the crypto space, being able to transmit this and to transfer it to the outer world through just the the basic model of oracles. This is something that will truly alters people's perception on the whole crypto ecosystem, because it's in a bit and like in a not a very far future from now. It's not that the discussion is not going to be only about cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies are just they started off as payment methods, but they're used as as a currency for accessing a certain type of utility. That the use cases are widening more and more and more. So the more people, like as time passes by and people start to appreciate the benefits that comes out of the mesh of cryptography and finance and economics, all embodied in this concept of cryptographic truth. Once people really start to realize the full potential of it, that's when real adoption will begin for the crypto ecosystem. And it will all be done on the back of a global appreciation for what cryptographic truth will do to the societies and the businesses that we engage with on a daily basis, if that made sense.
It totally makes sense and very inspirational towards the end. Especially for me, like I got into crypto and I joined Amun as well, just for the idea of being able to spread crypto to regular people, people like myself and friends and family here in Taiwan, to say, hey, this is an alternative to traditional finance. And I love what you said is like Chainlink is bringing accessibility to the table in like very poorly summarizing what you said, but that's what I believe.
Yeah, no, it really does. And it's just sort of broadcasting the benefits of cryptographic systems to the outer world, because before that, all blockchains and smart contracts, they were operating in silos. There wasn't really any way for the outer world to recognize it and even potentially have it integrated into their existing backends. Well, that's what oracles are all about. And Chainlink being the first mover and having, again, with the proven track record of the network itself of node operators, they will be the one, like the network effect of such a of such an impressive network is unmatched, especially when you're trying to get all of those worlds, systems, and departments to communicate and interact with each other. The way I think about it is, what HTTPS is, of course.
Secure hypertext transportation protocol.
Yes. It is now the standard of, any website that does not have HTTPS integrated into their system. You would personally feel that this is sketchy, that there might be something wrong with the website, that an attacker might be messing with the domain name service of the website. It's just not secure.
Yes.
And looking at Chainlink, at the network effect of the DONs, the decentralized Oracle networks, I mean, we are reaching this phase where you can sort of determine that an application is secured enough as long as they have Chainlink integrated into it. So that's why I see this project as a very valuable component of this ecosystem to grow more and more and to emerge outside of the boundaries that it has been in so far.
And you've made me a believer, I have to say. I understood Chainlink at a very basic level, even after doing all the research and doing this extra reading before our show today. And even now, I'm like, I see where things are going as far as the protocol and the crypto space in general. And it just looks like a fantastic horizon.
Yeah, it's a mesh, a true mesh of networks. Like, whenever you look at this diagram of like what's the difference between a blockchain and a centralized system, it's like those all of those circles, and all of those, like in a centralized system, all of those circles are just sort of coming out of this central circle in the middle. It's like the sun with rays coming out of it. That's what a centralized system looks like. But when we look at blockchains, it's all of those interconnected circles that have, like, those straight lines connecting all of them. But
Yes,
that's how we envision blockchain. We were not
exactly. Yes,
we were not at the stage of truly beginning to experience this interconnectedness of different chains serving different use cases, actually working together in harmony and getting you whatever function or task you were trying to get at. So that the decentralized Oracle network, I'm really seeing them as this new evolution of blockchain systems. Let's just leave it at that.
sounds good. I think that is a fantastic way to, because especially I feel like you starting off from your background, you brought it off really nicely to end, connecting your background to Chainlink towards the end of today's show, which is wonderful. Karim, is there anything you want to say to sum things up? Last pearl of wisdom.
Just give me a minute, because I felt
Sure.
I felt that there was something like the creme de la how do you say it? The creme de la creme
Creme de la creme.
creme de la creme. Yeah, it's just that piece of creme on the strawberry, just to
Yes.
it might sound like a bit of shilling for Chainlink, but it's truly what I believe. Again, I'm gonna circle back to the example that I said at the beginning. We're entering this multi-chain universe. You're going to have applications deployed on different chains, and at the end of the day, the thing that matters the most, which is the settlement, it's going to be done on Bitcoin. By the way, a fun fact: if for people who don't really understand how can this be done, it's done through something called anchoring the state. Anchoring, which is attaching the state of the Ethereum network at a specific time regarding your application, and anchoring that to the Bitcoin network. In essence, because the proof of work consensus algorithm, again, is the most secure and the most trusted network, or like Bitcoin acting as the most trusted network. So for you to be settling the state of your applications on Bitcoin, that's just like the nail in the coffin. That's when you know that this is the most trusted and reliable way that you can probably secure your application upon. So when you
Okay.
look at Chainlink, this is really what you are going to be, from my very humble and basic opinion. This is what's going to happen to Chainlink. It's going to be the de facto of communication, especially with the latest thing that we just discussed, the CCIP. Like the scope of the decentralized Oracle network is just expanding aggressively fast. Well, actually, not aggressively fast. It's expanding a lot, and it's all based on the success of the underlying network. And this is not something to be dismissed, because at the end of the day, why we keep repeating this notion that Bitcoin is the most trusted network, well, it's the technical implementation of the proof of work, but it's also how much money is locked into the Bitcoin network. We're talking about almost $1 trillion now. Well, we reached the $1 trillion mark a couple of weeks ago. So when you look at Chainlink's network, this is something that you just have to be paying attention to as time passes by. The more the total value secured by the network keeps increasing, the more reliable this network will be perceived by all the potential prospects of users, and the more confident people are in the network itself, in servicing its basic function as price feeds, and then fulfilling the plethora of other services that we've already touched upon, you will reach this conviction that this has grown into a very reliable and secure, and most importantly has a cryptographically proven track record that corroborates how successful they have been, how accurate they have been, and how they've just trying to keep maintain this liveness, because liveness is always a parameter that we're looking at in blockchain, because you don't want to be engaging with a certain node operator or even with a project that is not up 24/7, because at the end of the day, if you're not going to be up 24/7, then you can just deploy your application in a web 2.0 environment and in the traditional world that we're part of. So once you appreciate and recognize that this value secured by the network is just going to be increasing progressively, the more you should have this conviction that due to the reliability of the network itself, this is going to be the de facto in all the services that Chainlink is offering and will be providing later on. Always look at the total value secured. That's a parameter actually very specific to Chainlink. It's not something that I've actually been in contact with a couple of employees who work at Chainlink just to get a sense of if they have a convenient way of checking this metric, but they don't have it so far. However, from the conference itself that we all watched about a month and a half ago, this was like those were the figures that they were discussing, from the 30 to the 40 billion mark of worth of value being secured by the network. So always pay attention to that, and if this number keeps increasing, then you should know that Chainlink, as Bitcoin served as the legacy network of money over the internet protocol, just sending payments from point X to point Y without any intermediaries, and then Ethereum living up to its promise of serving as a programmable smart contracts, or like a global computer with the properties of programmable money. Chainlink is going to be the standard of what it is doing.
Nice. Thank you so much for having Karim on, everybody. I'm sure you appreciated his vast pool of Chainlink knowledge. I know I did. I and everyone at Amun really appreciate you stopping by and listening to this podcast. Don't forget to follow us on social media: Twitter at Amun, AMUN, Telegram at Amun Tokens. So stop by the Discord server as well. We're also on Reddit, r/Amun Tokens. I forgot to mention, but please don't forget to leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. Could be Stitcher, could be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. These all really help boost availability in the current podcast algorithm. And again, hope to see you guys. We might have a second episode tomorrow or a third episode this week. But thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to keep an eye out on your podcast RSS feed for next episodes. And Karim, thank you for being with us today. And hopefully we can get you on to do like a video episode at some point, though we'll keep this a surprise. You guys might see Karim again in the future, even sooner than you guys might expect. And Karim, thanks again. And we will talk to you later.
Thank you, Karim, for having me, and I hope that everyone enjoyed my unending ramble on Chainlink.
The best kind of unending ramble. All right. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.